It's Real Time, sponsored by the Mill Casino.
Welcome back, everyone. Joined in the studio by Ken Vilante. He is the owner of Coldwater Strong. Got him back in the studio again, thank goodness. I'm glad that we timed it. We timed it really good this year.
Exactly.
Listen, he's out there catching the fish. He's out there R&D and everything. He's up and down the river from Tri-Cities to Buoy 10 using his products that he makes. So these aren't things that are just new and just kind of come up with. This is stuff that is proven by everyone. It seems like everywhere that I go, I'm seeing folks that are throwing your pre-rigged gear.
Correct.
Which I can understand. We've made our own stuff for as long as I can remember, but it's pretty darn nice when you can buy high quality gear that's pre-rigged that you just clip on and go. That's just not going to come apart on you.
And you know, the thing about it is simplicity, and that's what I was looking at, and make it very simple for a lot of the fishermen to go out there and just tie leaders up, use the main line, and go for it, and spend less time on the bank, more time on the river,
which is
the water.
In the water, which is more important, right? You want to be able to keep your gear fishing and be effective. Now, you make all kinds of different gear. I mean, we're going to talk about steelhead and sockeye kind of specifically today, but if you go to Coldwater Strong's website, go to Fisherman's, you're going to see a ton of different things that you can utilize to be more successful. So tell me what we got here. We've got castable sockeye and steelhead rig, a double rig. That's what you've got right here. That's a double rig,
which is right here. And the reason why it's castable, because we have two types of fishermen on the bank. Ones that run them out on a kayak, ones that stand on the bank. Some people don't have a kayak or a boat. This gives them the perfect opportunity to actually be on the bank and compete with everybody else.
Sure, so it's not spread so far out. This is set up to where you can get it on a reasonable size rod.
This rod is only a 10-foot rod.
Right.
So it's very easy and very manageable to cast.
Okay, now how about triple rigs? You got
the
triple
rigs are the ones like you have there for the steelhead and sockeye, and those are the avid guys that are taking the kayaks out and running it because they know where the zone is at, where the fish is traveling, and they just want to drop it right in that area.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you've been making these for how long now?
Oh, at least about 7-8 years.
Okay. Yeah. And I have noticed
it's now catching on.
Well, more so than that. I mean, years ago, we were all making our own stuff, different ways that we spreaders, which I'm still kind of that way. I mean, but this is different. I love how you have that set up. Where it's not going to
tangle.
It's not.
So it's
which is really interesting.
It's tangle-free. It spins 360 this way and this way too.
Yeah, I like that.
So when you cast it, it might seem like it's winding, but once it goes in the current takes it, then it straightens right out.
The first thing I notice, it doesn't have wire in the middle.
In the middle.
So once you hook a fish on those typical T setups that we've shown for so many years, it's very difficult to get those things bent back to where it'll spin freely. That will always do it.
Yes, and that's where the flexibility comes into this, and having the wire like we're traditionally used for. Yes. It's bent all the time.
Every time. And it gets frustrating. Sometimes it gets bent so bad, you end up cutting it off and you have to put another one on.
Correct.
Okay, so the setup you have here, this is your steelhead and sockeye version.
Correct.
So it's a double hook setup. So that means that based on what he has here, all right, and I know we're going to show you this when we do our Chevy Silverado Tech Tip in just a little bit. He's actually got a shrimp setup here, or whatever I guess you'd want to put on there, but a double hook on this one.
And a single.
And a single on this one. So this setup, based on our laws, the way that you can fish, this is all you could put on there, right? Now, bear with me. If you went with one that was 2 singles, then you could take and slide a plug down if you wanted to, right? So it gives you multiple options. But I like how do you make these pre-rigged for people to purchase like this?
No, I don't.
I was going to say, where'd all the spinning gloves go?
Yes. Yeah. And then the triples, you want to run 1 single hook on every one of them.
Yep. You only can have 3 hooks, and a treble hook is 1 hook.
Exactly.
So don't get confused by the fact it's got 3 points, which we hear about quite a bit. All right, okay, let's talk about rods. Sockeye, well, let me ask it this way. You get more questions about this than anybody.
Correct.
I get a lot of questions, but they call you specifically about that, and you can call Ken. His information's available for you. You got a line counter and a very specific edge rod, by the way.
Yeah.
What is it that you like from the bank for sockeye and, say, steelhead?
Well, you want a rod that's going to have some flexibility to feel the sockeye and steelhead, but then again, the second half, because you might hook onto a Chinook, and that's the other thing.
Right.
So you want to be able to have a rod that will cast anywhere from 3 to 6 ounces out there. This one here from Edge has a really good backbone to it and a really soft tip. And that's what you want, preferably for sockeye and steelhead when we're targeting specifically that species right there.
Sure.
And so anything above 10 foot to 12, if you can find a rod in that range is great, because sometimes you have to lift the rod really high.
Yeah, well, and it does help sometimes if you're going to be throwing a triple rig, because you can definitely cast a triple rig if you have the right setup. One of the things, though, that I really like when you're talking about this kind of fishing is you've got a line counter on there.
Yes, and the line counter is so imperative, because that's when you're going to take your lines out. When you're casting out, you're going to find that zone, and don't be afraid to ask the fisherman next to you, hey, what's your line counter at? And then when he's catching fish, that's the key right there. Then you can always repeatedly throw out to the same area.
Right.
And repeat your process over there and your success.
Now, you mentioned in a kayak or even with the boat, in the right zones, the right area, some spots you can't do that.
Correct.
But it's repeatable with that line counter.
Correct. Correct.
Right. So it's very important. Even when you're casting, if you cast, say you want to be at 35 feet for sockeye right off the bank, if you hit 40, then it's just an easy grind in. Or if you're short, then you can reel it up and recast it so that you can get in that same line. How important is it for sockeye specifically to be in that line, that spot?
You know, there's a, like you mentioned earlier, location, location, location. So we'll talk more about that when the sockeye and steelhead are running up the river and we see the flows that we're seeing right now. Yeah. Basically, they're sucked up right up to the bank. So we'll talk more when we have the line counter. Then you specifically can cast out 30 to 40 and hit those ranges right there. So the line counter is so imperative with that, with the reel in itself.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so it's the whole tool is gonna, the reel, the rod, and everything is gonna really build for your success.
It makes you more consistent, which will make you more successful.
And then make you more confident.
Correct. Okay, so that's the way to put it. Now, let's go the other direction, because he makes the pre-rigged 10-foot gaps for wobblers, you know, for fall Chinook fishing, when folks are, of course, using a boat or a kayak to get that out there, again, in areas that you're allowed to do so, right? Line counter there, extremely important, so that you know how far to get your gear out, because you got to have a buddy, right, that's going to be like, okay, you're, you know, wherever it is that you want to be at. Fish Finder will help with your depth lines and this and that, but you can't do any better than having a line counter.
A line counter, exactly.
Repeatable.
So, repeatable in the spot, and then your success ratio is going to be up. So
sticking to the topic of Chinook, or excuse me, silver, excuse me, I'm all over the place. Listen, I'm talking about 15 different things at the same time. Sockeye and steel, sticking to those. Most people are going to be just casting because they're relatively close to the bank. How many different versions of pre-rigged setups do you have that they could either mess with or that they should look for specifically?
There's actually, for the steelhead sockeye, there's 2 versions.
Okay.
For the salmon, I have 1 version.
Okay.
It's a lot heavier line. It's a 200-pound. It's more robust.
Whoa.
And so, but it's totally castable from Bonneville all the way down to Highway 14 down there.
Which makes sense, because those fish can put you in a different situation than, say, sockeye or a steelhead.
So, but this is a 120-pound mainline, so it can handle a Chinook.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Just don't let them get you near the rocks.
Yeah.
Which could be interesting.
Which is comes to the leader lengths and everything with these too. So you don't have to have a real long leader lengths. Everything is all
preferred not to.
18 to 24 inches. That's all you need.
Right.
And they're really close to the bottom.
They are.
Yeah.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned that. I got to cut to a break, but before we come back with our Chevy Silverado Tech Tip of the Week, do you ever find sockeye not on the bottom? Do you ever find sockeye where they'll suspend?
Incoming tide. They tend to be more suspended, but still close to the bank. And they'll still be in their traveling lengths, and you'll see them jumping all over the place. That's when you really want to get into the next topic of bobber fishing for sockeye.
That started something yesterday. Yes. I mean, it actually threw me for a little bit of a loop. I'm like, well, I've never done that, so I'm not going to try to talk to it. But it's bobber fishing. It can't be that hard, but there's certainly some things that you're going to need to know.
It's the same technique as steelhead.
Absolutely, but a little, well, you know what?
It is about the same technique.
It's the same.
We're still tossing upstream on an incoming tide, and we're just watching it.
Yeah.
And they're suspended and then bobber down, fish on.
Now, he's already done this, so I'm letting him talk. He's got the experience too. When we come back from this break, we'll have that Chevy Silverado Tech Tip of the Week. We're going to talk about bobber fishing for him, and we're going to show you a little bit closer with that Kershaw Tech Cam about how that rigging is set up. We'll be right back.
Outdoor GPS is brought to you by Chevy Silverado and the impressive new Turbo Max engine.